Hello there everybody, it is here the Japanese Train, aka Matt Twillman, here with a second installment of Matt's Merchandise, the show where I spotlight, highlight, and review items from across the Thomas Wooden Railway. Destinations, engines, roadway vehicles, rolling stock, you name it, I'll probably get to it at some point. Now today we are going to start off with, well, for one thing, in the last installment I reviewed the 10 Years in America Thomas pack. And that was all well and good, but you know what, I kind of want to broaden my horizons a little bit. So I decided that instead of reviewing like a 2-pack like that, I'm going to review something that collectively hasn't really been reviewed as much around the community, and that is Lorries 1 through 3, the Horrid Lorries. Gosh, you know, the Horrid Lorries, growing up, they were some of my favorite characters, and for reasons I don't really know why. But getting down to the actual items themselves, you know, there really isn't anything I could say about them in general, because I think that they're all really nice design models, but that's beside the point. Let's delve into the history of these items. Now, the Horrid Lorries were introduced in the early 2000s, except they were never introduced together. That's something to note. That's actually something very important to note, because that means that Lorry 1 in particular is much more common than any of the other two, especially Lorry 2. And the special thing about Lorry 1 is that he was introduced multiple times in multiple sets. And in addition to being sold individually, which I got him individually, and I got him in a video pack, and I got him in the recycling center. So I have 3 Horrid Lorries. I have 3 Lorry 1s, I should rephrase. Oh, currently 2, because I lost one, that's a different story. But I have a lot of Lorry 1s as compared to Lorry 2 and Lorry 3. I do have all 3, but Lorry 1 is by far the most common because he was sold in the Down by the Dock set, the recycling center, individually, in the Salty Secret VHS tape. He's been around the block. As for Lorry 2, not so much. He was only ever released in the service station, which is a road destination introduced in 2002 and discontinued in 2004, and it didn't really have that great amount in sales, as I'm pretty sure happened, and it's considered one of the rarest road destinations, which doesn't help Lorry 2 because he was only released in this destination. So, I mean, there's not really much else to say. Lorry 2 was only ever released in the service station for 2 years. And aside from that, we never saw Lorry 2 again. Whereas when you take the tenure of Lorry 1, he was introduced in 2001, and although he was discontinued individually in 2003, you saw him all the way up until 2008. That's a long tenure for a Lorry that only appeared in 1 episode. As for Lorry 3, he perhaps is even more rare because he was only sold in a promotional pack with Boko and Tiger Moth in 2001. And his cargo piece, he has a tarped cargo piece. I forgot to mention Lorry 1, when he was sold individually in the VHS tape, he had a blue piece of cargo and a flatbed. That the flatbed circulated on its own sometimes. Lorry 2 had a fuel cargo with his service station, and Lorry 3 had a tarp. And Lorry 3 was only ever in this promotional pack, which included Boko and Tiger Moth. And he's considered the rarest of the 3 Lorries, which is kind of interesting given how Lorry 2 was only around for so long, but even more so for the fact that Lorry 3 was only around for 1 year. 2001 and 2002 was Lorry 3's tenure, and it's almost incredible how the Lorries have such different release tenures, if that makes any sense. And personally, I think it's a shame. They should have sold them together, but alas, you know, whatever. It's unfortunate that we didn't see the 3 Lorries together in their own 3-pack, kind of like what we saw with Data, Jane, and Mabel, the sort of railway repair stuff and stuff like that. I would have loved to have had that as a kid, all 3 Lorries, but as a youngster, I had only Lorry 1, and you know, it was whatever. You know, the Ertl, it was much easier for me to find an Ertl, Lorries 1 through 3. But Lorry 2 is almost impossible to find nowadays. If you find a Lorry 3, you better frickin' pick it up. And Lorry 1, you could go with or without him, to be honest, because you could probably find him again. And Lorry 1 and Lorry 2, it's also kind of tricky because you don't really, there aren't that many differences between Lorry 1 and Lorry 2 other than the license plate. That's the only difference. As for Lorry 3, he has a different expression and everything, and the cargo pieces are different on each of them. But aside from that, they're all the same. And they're one of the stranger items in the not community, but in the Thomas Wooden Railway, to be honest. Just simply by the fact that they were only released for short periods of time, and for the fact that Lorry 1 got so much more time than the other two, which I guess is indicative of the fact that Lorry 1 had been, you know, he's the first of the 3 lorries. It makes more sense if they release the first out of all 3. Kind of like how you'd expect them to release at minimum 1 slip coach of the 3, you know, just so there is one. Something like that. Not, you know, not like, oh, we have to include all 3 of them, as in Ada, Jane, and Mabel and stuff like that. It makes sense, and also because Lorry 1 dominated the other merchandise ranges, you know, such as My First Thomas, Ertl, you know, Take-Alongs, you name it. He was probably in it at some point. Tommy. And Lorry 2 and Lorry 3, it's really unfortunate that they weren't released for as long as they were. I guess it's just they have a little bit more prevalence with me just because of my childhood as a youngster until, because I grew up with Lorry 1 exclusively for the Wooden Railway. I got Lorry 3 off of eBay for 15, Lorry 2 off for 5. But Lorry 1 I had growing up as a kid until I lost him at Chuck E. Cheese. As for whether or not they're necessary, you could very well get away with not having them. And it's really a shame because the items that they had, and not even just the items, but the characters themselves, had such potential. Oh well. It's just another page in the Thomas Wooden Railway that I wish could have been a greater, you know, stronger, you know, hold on their release. If I had my way, I would have had the lorries released up until 2008 in a 3-pack. That would have been perfect. You know, get all 3 lorries, hey! But, you know, I guess things just don't work out that way. And all that. I guess I could be overthinking it, because when you get down to it, the lorries, they were only in 1 episode. There's nothing special about the characters themselves other than that they came to Sodor and were mean. And that's happened so many times over that you almost forget that there were mean characters in Season 5, but then at the same time, you're like, oh yeah, the lorries. I guess they stick with you if you grew up the correct way with them. Like, if you grew up around Season 5 like I did, I guess then you'd have a little bit closer of an attachment with them. Otherwise, I mean, most people nowadays can get away with being a fan of Thomas and not knowing who the lorries are. And that's a shame, you know. They fade into history like Billy, kind of. It's just another page in the history of the Thomas Wooden Railway. And I really do think I'm over dwelling on this, but there really isn't much to say about the lorries. And if I were to give them a rating, I would give probably the 3 of them a 9, not a 9 out of 10, probably a 7 out of 10. Simply because Lorry 2 in particular is a little disconcerting to me. They really didn't put any effort into Lorry 2, other than changing the license plate and the name on the bottom. Lorry 2 is no different from Lorry 1 at all. And they really should have changed the facial expression. They should have just done something different with Lorry 2, because he really is just a liability now. You could get 2 Lorry 1s and then just, you know, take a Sharpie to that license plate and boom, you've got Lorry 2. It really isn't. There really isn't much to say about Lorry 2 because he isn't really Lorry 2. He's just a Lorry 1 with a painted license plate. That's all it is. They really should have done better with Lorry 2, to be honest. As for Lorry 3, I think Lorry 3 is all good with his tarp and everything and his facial expression. He's alright. I just wish that they gave these models more of a chance, you know? They were destined to fail from the beginning, and I don't know about the sales for Lorry 1, but I think they were decent because he got put into a couple of sets there. That really doesn't happen unless the models sell, you know? And then they have a surplus. If you sell it, you know, they'd be more opportunities to buy, you know, like in the Down by the Dock set and such and such. And aside from Lorry 1 kind of had a privileged sort of introduction to the Wooden Railway because he started out being sold individually. And that is what tears down Lorry 3 and Lorry 2. Because the Lorry 2 is only in a destination that sold for 2 years and didn't really sell well and is now one of the rarest road destinations. Good luck finding that. And Lorry 3, he was released in a promotional pack, which you got out of a coupon book. I mean, hot damn, that's rare. It's unfortunate because that means that Lorry 2, and especially Lorry 3, who's one of the greatest of probably the best of the lorries, didn't get the chance that they deserved because they were destined to fail from the beginning. Because they weren't sold individually. Or at least in a 3-pack. Because then, that means, hey, not many people are going to know there's a coupon book with Lorry 3. Not many people are going to buy that coupon book that has Lorry 3. So, Lorry 3, screw you, Lorry 3, you're not going to sell. That's basically what it is here. As for Lorry 2, kind of the same deal, except they kind of wanted them to sell with a destination and all that. And Lorry 1, well, Lorry 1, having been released individually and seen on almost every store shelf, he got first dibs, you know. And that really sucks, because all 3 of the lorries deserve an equal chance to be sold. And I don't know why I'm suddenly turning into some sort of like political activist, like, free the lorries, free the lorries. You're going to see me picketing outside of Mattel's office with like a sign that says free the lorries. And you know, what else can I say? Free the lorries! And Lorry 2 and Lorry 3, you need to fight back and take what is truly yours. Fight for the common good. For lorry equality. Oh, man. I sound like a loon right now. I guess that's why I got my own radio show. My goodness, I hope you all stuck around to the end. This has been dragging on for quite a while, but hey, there's a lot to say here about these friggin' lorries, am I right? Lorry 3 and Lorry 2, you should have been released individually, or at least in a 3-pack. I'm telling you, they should have been released individually. And Lorry 1, yeah, we all know about you. You got your recycling center release, you got your Down by the Dock set release, you got your Salty Secret VHS pack release, and you got your individual release. What do Lorry 2 and Lorry 3 have? Nothing. They got nothing, and they got discontinued early because of you, Lorry 1. Because of you. Now, I hope y'all know that I'm just joking here, but I really did overdo it there. But it is true when you get down to it. The lorries were set up for failure from the beginning because, you know, if anybody saw that episode when the lorries were still around in 2002, which they probably did. I mean, it's not like they just stopped showing season 5. I think that they would have a hard time recognizing that there were 3 released. I didn't even know that they released all 3 of the lorries until a couple of years ago, which is probably around like 2009, I want to say. That was the first time I realized, hey, there's more than one lorry in this Thomas Wooden Railway. I thought it was just Lorry 1 and that was it. I thought it was like the take-alongs, you know? And it turns out they actually did make all 3 lorries. And having got them, they're nice. Having all 3 of them, hey, they're really good from a collecting standpoint because I tell you what, if you find out that there's all 3 of them and you don't have all 3 of them, it sticks in you. It gets under your skin. It gets under your fingernails. Why do I only have 1 lorry when there's 2 others out there to get, you know? It gets to you. It gets to you. And I've got all 3. I guess for some of you it doesn't really work that way. Oh, you know, I don't need a lorry. But hey, it's the lorries. I like them. I personally love them. And other than that, there's not really much else to say, as I've said for the umpteenth time, because they only have 1 episode and very limited releases with the exception of Lorry 1. And that really is all to say. They're good items, 7 out of 10. That's going to be my rating for these items. Well, gosh, guys, thank you all for staying around to the end, because I really got into it at the end there, and I hope that you all saw that. Well, if you made it to this point, you definitely did. And I really hope that you enjoyed this. I love doing these sort of radio shows, and it was actually very tough for me to find out which item to review, and I had some help, but ultimately this was my decision to review the Horrid Lorries. Tell me if you liked it. If you want to recommend some items for me to review, I could certainly do that for the next installment. If you leave something in the comments section below, I could take a look. And that's pretty much going to do it for this installment of Matt's Merchandise. Thank you all for listening so very much. Check out my channel, HiroTheJapeneseTrain. Follow me on Twitter at HTJTMattTTTE. And as always, thank you for watching my review of the 3 Horrid Lorries and Free the Lorries! Free the Lorries! Free the Lorries from Lorry 1 privilege! Thanks again, guys. You've been great.